The Eights has already figured out what Dallas is doing on night one in Pittsburgh, going defense from the SEC twice. Corner Jermod McCoy, ACL issues be darned. And edge rusher R. Mason Thomas from Oklahoma. It's been a while since Dallas went defense twice in round one, 2005, but it went great. Hall of Famer DeMarcus Ware and our own Swagoo. Here's year two Cowboys head coach Brian Schottenheimer on Dallas's draft needs.
I think we did a really good job setting ourselves up to be able to draft natural and draft pure, which is what you want to do. You don't want to have to be forced to reach for a player. That's when you make mistakes.
Tim Hasselbeck, are you buying what Brian Schottenheimer's selling there?
I think it's true on the defensive side of the ball. I'm not totally positive that's right on the offensive side. Look, if there's a receiver there, I don't think they're taking him. But I do think it's true on the defensive side because, they could address all three levels of their defense. You go back, it's funny seeing that graphic on 2005. Look, if they went, edge rusher, interior defensive lineman, wouldn't it be terrible? If they went edge rusher, linebacker, edge rusher, secondary player, wouldn't be terrible. So I think I see all of that and think there is some truth to what Brian Schottenheimer is saying.
Yeah, I agree. I think it really comes down to the fact that they have so many needs. Like Tim said, you could draft at multiple positions on defense, and I wouldn't quibble with it. I don't think it's worth it for them to go up and get a player. I think the top three edges will likely be gone by then. But I will say this. Sonny Styles, to me, is the dream fit, both in terms of the best player of the position, the glaring need for Dallas. And if I'm them, I am praying that he gets out of the top 10 and falls to them at 12. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen. It seems unlikely after the Combine, but that, to me, would be the optimal outcome for Dallas.
Brian Schottenheimer may have talked about not needing to reach with any of those early picks. That part's not earth-shattering. But, Tim, something you alluded to, Schottenheimer did address and made some waves when he said he wouldn't rule out any position when Dallas is on the clock.
You want to be prepared to do what we need to do on defense, but certainly we're not going to pass on a great offensive player if they're there at one of those spots.
That's 12 overall, Bill Barnwell. Reflexively, it seems a little crazy Dallas would go offense that early. Is it?
Well, it's good that we've narrowed it down. The Cowboys are taking a defensive player or an offensive player. Brandon Aubrey's job is safe in Big D for another year. I do believe offense is in play here just because of the Cowboys' history. We give Jerry Jones some flack, I would say, for maybe getting distracted by shiny things. But look at their draft history. They lean into drafting offensive linemen in the first round. They have taken 3 of them in recent years. We're now starting up front for them. All the great Cowboys teams in the past 30 years have had great offensive lines. And I do look at right tackle where, you have Terrence Steele in the final year of his deal, most likely. He did sign an extension, but it's really a 1-year contract. Would the Cowboys consider an offensive tackle at 12? I do think that's a possibility if, as Mina said, maybe a Sonny Styles is not there. Maybe there's not a great defensive player for them. Could still go defense at 20, but maybe get a tackle at 12.
All right, I'm going to say something that is going to sound insane, and it's not going to happen. But this is my favorite Jeremiah Love destination. And I think he's going to be gone by then, by all accounts. But the funny thing about running backs, guys, is, and this is so weird with this position, the way I feel is they're actually more valuable if you have a good offensive line and a good receiver core, because dropping it back like Jeremiah Love into this offense would be like what happened when Saquon Barkley ended up in Philadelphia, in my estimation. Whereas if you put him behind, I don't know, the Titans offensive line, for example, I don't think he would be as productive, and I don't think he would be as valuable. But this was already a top 5 offense, and I think if they had Love, it would just go nuclear. They have Javonte Williams, who's making like $8 million. So I don't think it's going to happen, but I do want to say I would like to see it. It would be my favorite outcome.
I don't think it's going to happen either. I think a lot of it is the money, spent at the position and the fact that, that doesn't seem to make a ton of sense. I will say this. If for some reason you've got him rated incredibly high and for whatever reason he does not go, look, it was Brian Schottenheimer's dad, Marty, who coached LaDainian Tomlinson, in San Diego. His rookie year, he had over 390 touches. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the amount of impact a running back in their rookie season can have on an offense and on their team. That is the value if they are an elite player. And so I don't think it's going to happen, but I agree. It would be kind of funny.
Well, since buying the team, Jerry Jones has drafted 4 running backs in the first round. Half of them, absolute home runs. Ezekiel Elliott was the first-team All-Pro, and up here. Staying in Denver, in case you missed it, the Broncos traded for Jalen Waddle earlier this month, a move that has current running back J.K. Dobbins excited for what's next with that offense.
Then we got another guy that just came in, and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, not bad.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
they're poison because we got Cortland Sutton, we got the young Pat Bryant, we got a great O-line, we got everything, right? We got an embarrassment of riches on this team of talent.
Bill Barnwell added needed depth out wide in Denver, new OC. So do the Broncos take another step forward?
They could, but I think Bo Nix has to take a step forward with them, because the one thing that can stop playmakers from getting the ball if the ball is not accurate, and that has been the Bo Nix weakness so far as a pro. He's great at extending plays, creating out of structure, but that becomes a weakness when he doesn't deliver on-target passes. He was the 4th worst quarterback in the league last year in terms of throwing on target. And so when he is working out of structure, when he's moving on the pocket, his feet don't get set, that has to be more consistent to get the ball to all those exciting receivers that Denver suddenly has in that receiving room.
Yeah, you see 4th worst amongst qualified QBs on those passes of 10-plus air yards. Also, worst completion percentage outside the pocket last season than he had as a rookie. Maybe the best receiver in the game on a given Sunday, Jackson Smith and Jigba signed the richest receiver deal ever this week. He addressed that on Wednesday.
It's an honor to feel that confidence come from your teammates and come from, the 3rd floor and your head coach. And, for us to get this deal done, speaks volumes. Definitely just a little weight off my shoulders and just to go out there and, let it fly.
Mina Kimes with JSN locked up. Where should Seattle look in the draft?
So they have bigger needs than receiver, guard, running back, offensively loom large. But I do think they should look to add to the position at some point, because right now you have the highest paid receiver, deservedly in football, JSN. You have what I would describe as a middle class, upper middle class receiver, Rashid Shaheed, who they brought back. They're going to need to have value at that position, and the way you find value is you continue to throw darts in the draft. I would look for them to add one maybe in the middle rounds.
Well, the Chiefs could use some help out wide. Headlines this week, they released the first video of Patrick Mahomes throwing since tearing his ACL back in December. Tim, what'd you make of what you're seeing out of Mahomes at practice?
It's just a reminder of, how much work goes into guys coming back from serious injury. We kind of, I think, take it for granted with how quickly guys bounce back. ACL November, and next thing you know, they're there for week 1. You can just see the journey. It's never, a straight path, getting better every day. There are setbacks, all of that. And so just an appreciation for a guy that we expect to play at an extremely high level when he returns, that the road back is often long and hard, and, definitely face your challenges along the way.
And Mahomes says the goal is to be back without limitations in week 1. Bill Barnwell, whenever we see Mahomes back from ACL, LCL tears in December, he has a new running back, Kenneth Walker III, Super Bowl MVP. How will that addition impact this offense?
I'm excited. This is going to be an evolution for the Kansas City Chiefs when it comes to their run game because of what Kenneth Walker did and did not do in Seattle. He was much better running the football from under center than he was running from the shotgun. Lowest success rate in football amongst regular backs over the last 4 years when he was running from the gun. Now, the Chiefs have been a heavy gun run game, a lot of zone runs from the shotgun. They run a lot of RPOs with Patrick Mahomes. Have to admit, that's kind of a little passe at this point in the NFL. A lot of teams getting under center more often. They want to run more gap runs. Play action from under center has been really efficient. And Kenneth Walker, that fits what he wants to do. They have the interior offensive linemen to do that at a high level. So very intrigued to see if the Kenneth Walker signing means we see more under center for the Chiefs early in the season, and how Andy Reid misses up that, the Walker under center run stuff with the Patrick Mahomes gun RPO offense they've run for so many years in Kansas City.
If they do run more under center, and I'm agreeing with Bill, I think they should. I am really interested in seeing if that finally opens up the play action passing attack, which has just not been, a big part of Chiefs offense as of late. And in order to do so, I think they really need to add a receiver who can benefit from that, winning particularly at the intermediate level, right? Those zones created by play action, because right now, there's not one on the roster. Rashee Rice would be in that role, and he showed it his rookie season, but he struggled last year and is likely facing a suspension. And otherwise, you have a couple of deep threats, ostensibly, in Tyquan Thornton and Xavier Worthy, but there's no reliable receiver to work the middle of the field. I think where the Chiefs are drafting in the first round, both spots, there will be opportunities to address that. They have other needs, edge and corner, but I would look at the receivers. If it's not at the top, then maybe later in the draft, a Casey Concepcion perhaps, or a Denzel Boston. If I'm a Chiefs fan, I really want them to come out of the first round with a pass-catching threat.
Yeah, with Eric Bieniemy back in the fold, you understand the need to get a pass catcher with those 2 first-round picks, but the Chiefs all-time 6 receivers drafted in the first round have combined for just 1 Pro Bowl berth. That was Dwayne Bowe. Still to come here on NFL Live. Brian, busy week on the Pro Day circuit. From our living room to yours, thanks for kicking off your weekend with us here on NFL Live. We are Tim Hasselbeck, Mina Khan, Bill Barnwell. I'm Phil Murphy. And 4 weeks from right now on this show, we'll be dissecting an NFL draft. First round in the rear view. But for now, it's projection. And the most intrigue, perhaps, surrounds the near consensus QB2. Let's need a long-term plan at quarterback. What is up for debate is when they attack it. There's a lot of buzz with the 2027 class. Should New York be in the QB market this year in this draft?
I do not think so. So the Jets have a tremendous amount of ammunition in the draft, right? 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a real opportunity with that ammunition to turn around a roster that still needs a lot of work. I think most folks, myself included, expect them to take a pass rusher with that second pick, but you also need help in the secondary, both corner, safety. You need more wide receivers. You need guards, and dropping a quarterback into that situation, well, to me, it would only make sense if you really loved and believed in the quarterback. And while I do think Ty Simpson has potential, I also think for him to succeed in the NFL, he would have to be an outlier given his stature and also the lack of experience, and particularly those 2 things combined. So I would say he is not the type of quarterback to merit, I think, making that leap, even though the rest of the roster needs work. And if I'm the Jets, I'm focused on improving the roster this year so that next year they can take a quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right in terms of, the outlying characteristics that typically come with, first round draft picks. Simpson doesn't possess those. I think the tricky thing here is the Jets, coaching staff nearly got fired after this past season. And, one of the ways you can save your job is to show some promise and some upside. And so I do think that with Geno Smith, coming into the season as their presumed starter, one of the ways you can kind of salvage your situation is you draft a quarterback, if in fact agreeable, like if you believe in him, and then he takes over at some point and you show promise. Because look, the Jets are more than one player away at any position to being a competitive football team. But if you're drafting good guards and edge rushers and things like that, and you don't have a quarterback that can show promise and play well, you're probably drafting the guard and the edge rusher for the next staff. And so that's just the I think the rub here in terms of what you end up doing. And I do think, with Simpson, just kind of get it out of the way, because of the 5th-year option with first-round draft picks, and because I do think, with his experience or lack of experience, I do think having that is going to be important with whoever takes him.
Yeah, the inexperience here is the big concern. It's going to be a slow development curve. This is a guy who really only played 1 year in school as a starter, and the track record first-round picks at quarterback over the last decade for those 1-year players, not especially great. On one hand, you have Kyler Murray, which is a big positive, but Anthony Richardson, Trey Lance, Dwayne Haskins, you're looking Mitch Trubisky. You're looking at guys who were expected to continue developing at the pro level, but who did not. There's just a lot of variance that comes with 1 year of playing quarterback at the college football level. And so we see teams typically prefer those multi-year starters. I can't imagine someone drafting Ty Simpson at the very top of this draft. But Maybe at the end of the first round. Maybe those teams drafting at the beginning of the second round. Could they say, hey, we want to jump the Cardinals, jump the Jets, jump the Browns, trade into the bottom of the first round to get him? That's a scenario I could see. And in that case, the fifth-year option would still be in play.
And that's what Field Yates has in his latest mock. And to Mina's point, the word she used, ammunition. If the Jets do forego quarterback next month, they have 3 first-round picks next year. And to have the prime pick of that class, all you need is one of 4 things. The Colts, the Cowboys, or the Jets to stink, or 1 or 2 of those to struggle enough to package picks and get and vault into the top 3 to 5. You know, the best way to stop a quarterback is just keep him from throwing the ball. Field Yates has been busy ranking his top 5 edge rushers in this year's class. Arvell Reese, Reuben Bain, David Bailey, top 3 on his board, all held pro days this week, and all 3 have spoken at length about why they think they're ready for the next level.
When you talk about each of these guys, they're special. Guys who have opportunities to change the face of some of these organizations and their cultures.
Fast and violent. So that's what I'll be thinking I'm lining up. Just play fast as I can and be as violent as possible.
If I'm taking a defensive player and I do not take David Bailey in that pick, then I'd really rethink my process in the draft.
I know this guy service as a football player that I can become. I feel like there's just so much stuff I can work on.
Like Mike Tyson, he wasn't the most tallest. He wasn't the tallest guy, or wasn't the longest limb guy. But when you felt him, you felt him. And you wish you kept your distance.
So much debate about these edge rushers. Mina, when you look at this group, how much does one guy stand out over the rest?
One doesn't. It's not like last year where I thought it was very clear Abdul Carter was the best pass rusher. I think if you're a team looking to draft one of these guys, if you're the Jets, you're going to have your choice of them. Self-scouting is almost as important as scouting the players because they all bring such different attributes. And you have to ask yourself, what do we need? What is our timeline? What are we looking for? David Bailey, I believe, it gives you the most immediate pass rush juice. That's reflected in his productivity in college. Less advanced as a run defender, less skillful. Reuben Bain Jr., I think, gives you the highest floor where he is a very complete player. He is proven. And then Arvell Reese is the wild card because he might have the highest ceiling of them all in terms of his athletic tools. But as we know, he played more so off the ball. His pass rush production was limited. His pass rush usage was limited in college. So if you're the Jets and you're drafting him or any other team, you have to have a plan to use him in a hybrid role as he develops his pass rush tools. So I think for those teams who are looking at these pass rushers, it is very important that they ask, what is our plan? What do we need from them? And then you can pick, okay, which of these players' traits do we want the most for our team?
It's interesting you bring up the floor for Reuben Bain because, when you look at the type of player he was in terms of the production his entire time at Miami, it reminds me, I called a few Miami games early in his career. I remember talking to Jason Taylor on the sideline before the game his freshman year, and he's like, listen, you have no idea. This guy's a first-round draft pick. He's so good. And I'm like, really? He's 18 years old. And he's like, he's unbelievable. And, I do think there is something when you go to a program like Miami and you meet the expectations with the players that have been through there. He's an incredible football player, and the draft process sometimes can, highlight numbers that can start to bother some people. And so now, hey, it's his arm length, and it's, things like that. I just, at a position where there's a relatively high bust rate when you're talking about drafting defensive linemen, Bain's versatility, the fact that essentially he's kind of been tracked for this moment, I think makes him a very safe pick at a position that usually there's a decent amount of risk with.
I'm so intrigued by David Bailey and where he lands because the fit is going to have to matter here. As a pass rusher, just a pure pass rusher, David Bailey is the most refined and most impressive of these players. He can step right in and be a third down pass rusher for you. But this is now an NFL where we see the best defenses, the most impressive defenses, these Super Bowl winning defenses. They want to play with light boxes. They want to play with a nickel defender on the field 94% of the time, as the Seahawks did a year ago. And that means you have to have stout edges who who can hold up against the run. We saw it the Seahawks last year. They added DeMarcus Lawrence, Uchenna Nwosu was excellent for them, Boye Mafe was excellent for them. I wonder if David Bailey has the ability to make that kind of impact as a run defender, if he can hold up against all the gap scheme stuff, all the pulling linemen, all the sift blocks from fullbacks and tight ends. That is the question for me about him. As a pass rusher, no concerns at all. He's going to step right in and be productive. But you're going to have him probably at a team where you're comfortable playing your base defense and getting 3 linebackers on the field on early downs, because you don't want to be playing light boxes with an edge rusher who might not have the ability to hold up on early downs against the run.
And some numbers that support that point, Bill. Bailey tied for the FBS lead in sacks, led FBS in pressure percentage, but ranked 186th in run stop percentage, just 4% last season. Hey, we're not still live. Arizona State hosts its pro day today. It's never a bad idea to spend the day in Tempe. However, highly ranked wide receiver prospect Jordan Tyson will not work out due to a lingering hamstring injury. Our Field Yates offered this update this week, tweeting, quote, that Tyson will work out for NFL teams on April 17th, doing positional work only. Tyson is Fields' 9th ranked player in the class and is bound for the Chiefs at 9th overall in Fields' latest 2-round mock. Let's rewind through some pro day news from this week, starting in South Bend, where Jeremiah Love did not participate Tuesday. Very little debate. He's the top running back in this year's class. Per Field Yates' eyes, it's Irish at 1 and 2, Love and teammate Jadarian Price. Love fresh off scoring 21 touchdowns this season, breaking the Notre Dame single-season record held by Jerome Bettis since 1991. Tim Hasselbeck, how do you see Love making an impact at the next level?
I think the big thing is running backs, especially if you're an elite running back, which Love projects to be. Just the impact you can have on a team in your rookie season. You think about Christian McCaffrey, nearly 200 touches his rookie year. Bijan Robinson, about 270 touches his rookie year. Saquon Barkley, well over 300, his rookie year. So I think that's the intrigue at a position that seems to be devalued a little bit. The elite of the elite can have immediate impact, and that's a big deal for anybody that wants to draft him inside the top 10.
And Field has Love going to the Commanders at 7 overall. Let's rewind to Wednesday. Receiver Carnell Tate did work out at Ohio State's pro day. Per Field, Tate is the top wideout in this class. He was targeted 162 times over 3 seasons in Columbus, had 4 total drops. Tate's followed by Arizona State's Jordan Tyson and USC's Mekhi Lemon, who was a unanimous first-team All-American last season. Bill Barnwell, to you, is Tate the clear wide receiver 1 in this class?
Not only is he the clear wide receiver 1, he's underrated somehow, which is bizarre for a player playing a skill position at one of the biggest schools in the country. But this has been a trend with Ohio State wide receivers. Go back to Jackson Smith and Jigba, overshadowed a bit by Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, both of whom went higher in the draft, but Jason, of course, turned to be a superstar. Next generation, Emeka Ibuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. Ibuka got kind of a lower profile. He's played better so far. I know Jeremiah Smith is an incredible prospect, but just Carnell Tate, 6th in the NFL in yards per route, in the nation in yards per route run, I should say, last year. He's an incredible prospect, independent of the guy on the other side of the field at wide receiver.
Fields mock says it'll be a short move for Tate from Columbus to Cleveland, going 6th overall to the Browns. Rewind back to Monday. LSU's pro day, cornerback Mansour Delane showcasing his talents following an impressive 2025, his first year in Baton Rouge after 3 in Blacksburg. Delane ranked 2nd amongst Fields' top corners in the draft, second only to Jermod McCoy, who Field has going to Dallas at 12. Delane did not allow a single touchdown last year as a primary defender and allowed just 27.7% completion rate. Mina, how much will that translate for Delane at the next level?
I think it will translate, because when I watch Mansour Delane, the number one thing that comes to mind is just polish. He is a pro-ready corner. He has excellent instincts in zone in terms of route recognition, closing on the ball. But where I love him the most is on those press man reps where he can use his strength at the line of scrimmage, and then he has a tremendous ability to stay in phase after that in man coverage. I think there's a lot of teams picking inside the top 15 that could use him. Chiefs could go wide receiver, but I would not dislike him there, and I do think he's going to find a home early in the draft.
Per Field, it's CB2 in positional rankings, but the first corner off the board going to the Bengals at number 10 overall. Coming up next, a fascinating, for as long as he's been in the league, Rams coach Sean McVay has made headlines as an offensive innovator, and it's not just creative audible names. Hired at 30, then the youngest coach to reach a Super Bowl, which LA won. And guys on his staff have benefited with plenty of success landing head coaching jobs of their own. But as Sarah Barshop tells us in a piece from 2025, it's rare opportunity and rare demand being a McVay assistant.
If you take the role seriously, it allows you to be able to understand things about the big picture that you wouldn't otherwise get exposed to. You're able to kind of see the genesis of game plans, the genesis of the playbook.
Every Tuesday, you can find a Rams offensive assistant turning head coach Sean McVay's vision into the weekly game plan.
Touchdown! What a call from Sean McVay!
We've had a good track record of some guys that have gone on that have been successful drawers and now are really successful coordinators or head coaches.
Love you.
Love you, brother.
Let's do this thing,
You're the best in the world. Let's go.
These guys, be you.
McVay says one of his greatest learning lessons came from a job he had when he was an assistant coach in Washington under offensive coordinator Kyle Shanahan in 2010.
I remember when I was drawing plays for Kyle Shanahan, I got exposure to be able to see how he, looked at the game. Hey, why are we doing this, or what's the thought process behind it? It was a great teaching tool for me.
Yeah, Sean was awesome. The picture draw always has the most access to the coordinator, the guy you spend the most time with.
Two-jet lightning, Z under. Double left, two-jet lightning, Z.
With McVay's rise in the coaching ranks to offensive coordinator and then head coach in 2017, he's been able to pass on the play drawing baton to coaches on his staff.
I started drawing in 2008. It's kind of a rite of passage. I think Shane handed off to me when he came to the Rams. I handed off to Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen, I think, handed off to Zach Robinson. So there's a nice little fraternity we got going there.
What was your reaction, Zach, when you found out you'd be doing this role?
Depression. At first, it's a lot of long nights, long hours. There's a lot of pictures to draw.
I'd never drawn. I'd drawn with a piece of paper and a pen on everything. It's not easy at first, though. You're also trying to bring Sean's vision to life on a picture. And so that's hard to do at times, where you don't want players to ever truly run a route just like it's drawn and designed on a picture, because that's their creativity. That's who they are as players. That's what makes them special. But you would like to be able to bring out some of what you as a coach would like it to look like on the page. And that's a challenge. That's a little bit of a form of art.
Coaches use an architectural program to bring the pictures to life. Last season, Nate Scheelhaus held the crucial role of taking McVay's play script to build the week's offensive schemes, which he turned around overnight.
So the starting point would be after I get the concepts of the week and the formations and the plays that we're anticipating running. You've kind of got this library of files that you have and similarities, at least with some of those concepts. You're opening it up, and this week we're going to specifically run it in this specific formation. So you're typing out, man, the formation is snug, right? We're running 11 pop, and the defense that we're planning on getting is over defense, playing cover 3.
And that's what the players use after they see the presentation from the offensive coordinator, and they build the whole playbook off of that.
Down the right sideline, caught by Nakua, touchdown LA!
When you think back to drawing plays for Sean, is there like a moment that comes to mind?
There is, for sure. It involves Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur. It's the simplest play known to man. It's both stick. It's just 2 5-yard stick routes. And I remember Sean wanted to draw with a straight stem and an out, and then Matt came back and said, no, it should be a inside stem, vertical, and out. So I redrew them all that way, and then Sean said, what are you doing? I told you it's straight stem. So I kind of got back in the middle between Matt and Sean, and I didn't know who to answer. One's the offensive coordinator, one's the head coach. I remember redrawing the most basic pass known to man way more times than I should have.
There's a lot of worth to it in terms of the amount of detail that goes into it, the amount of also communication as that drawer that you have to be. And so I do believe it's an important deal, and so a lot of respect to the guys that have done it.
You got to do a little bit of everything. So you just kind of gives you a very good foundation on how you're going to coach the rest of your career.
But when you get exposure to these great coaches like Kyle, like Mike Shanahan, I look back and I realize how grateful I was to really be able to see how did they do it, and then what's the best way to be able to mesh all the best parts of them into what we try to do on a year-to-year and a week-to-week basis.
LA's had one of the best offenses in the league since McVay's arrival in 2017. The most red zone touchdowns, and they rank top 5 in yards per play and points per game. That's all translated to the 3rd most efficient offense in the league since then, only behind Kansas City and Green Bay. Tim Hasselbeck, when you watch McVay's offense, how have you seen it evolve over the years?
I think the big thing for me is when you watch them, he's true to his roots. Just the foundation of what they do is the run game that you were so used to seeing under Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan for that matter. It's just, and a lot of times on the move the pocket stuff off of it, it's the same. And so there's a history of tried and true stuff that has proved to work in the National Football League. At the same time, you'll see things that are his own additions to it. And so whether it's, using some of the condensed formations and requiring, his receivers to block a certain way and to insert them into certain run fits, to also hold the backside with some of the plays like you see on the screen there, because you're always looking for, in some of the zone run schemes, ways to hold the backside, and it allows you to push your number count one more. And so I just think when you look at all of that, he's kind of maintained his identity, but he's evolved, because if you don't evolve, then the rest of the league will catch up to you. So I think it's one of the things that's been most impressive about, his time as a play caller and as a head coach.
Yeah, we see him evolve in different ways, Tim, not only in terms of what the scheme does, but also who's in the scheme. He's always been, Sean McVay, an 11 personnel guy, which is 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. In 2024, they ran 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends, a total of 3 times. It was not part of the offense, but they had a moment this year against the Jaguars when Puka Nacua was out, where the entire offensive scheme, or the personnel, I should say, shifted. They ran 13 personnel 44% of the time the rest of the season. That's 1 running back again and 3 tight ends. And what that does is it creates a conflict for the defense and personnel. Do you want to match that with your nickel defense? Well, they're going to run the ball all over you. They were the most efficient rushing attack in football last year. And if you want to match with your base defense and get 3 linebackers on the field, well, they're going to throw. Matthew Stafford had an 84 QBR this year, throwing out of 13 personnel. So you're going to create explosives in the passing game. You're going to create efficient runs against wider boxes. You're going to force defenses to kind of have to show you what they're going to do pre-snap, because there's just not many teams that have a lot of defensive stuff for 13 personnel offense. So really a way for that offense to evolve with different personnel, even though, of course, they had a couple of really talented wide receivers in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I think that evolution that you're describing, Bill, where they did use so much 13 last year, adds an interesting layer to the draft and that early pick they have at 13, because it is very easy to imagine them drafting the tight end out of Oregon, Kenyon Sadiq. They drafted his former teammate, Terrence Ferguson, in the 2nd round last year, but Ferguson is more of like kind of a power slot type. Sadiq is more of a traditional. He could play in line. He's a good blocker and would allow them, I think, to not just continue 13 personnel, but almost maximize it moving forward. That said, Devontae Adams turns 34 this year, and he did have some injuries last season, which makes me think they might need to just take a receiver there, like Jordan Tyson out of ASU, because that's where positional value comes into play, right, with receivers being more valuable than tight ends. But I also think the need is going to be there. And I feel that when they do give Puka Nacua the gigantic contract we're all expecting, they're going to need to find value at the wide receiver position, and Tyson might allow them to do that.
And not a lot of picks with which to work in this draft. After they go at 13, only 2 more selections for the Rams until 207. Overall. Programming note for you here. NFL Live is going to hit the road in Arizona Monday and Tuesday next week for the annual league meetings. And how about this? Sean McVay, Rams head coach, is set to join the show on Monday. We do have a developing story here at ESPN. The Martin County Sheriff's Office has told media outlets that Tiger Woods was involved in a rollover car crash on Friday. Authorities say the rollover crash occurred just after 2 p.m. Eastern, not far from where Woods lives in Jupiter Island. There were no other details provided, though CBS 12 cited a source saying that there did not appear to be serious injuries. Woods' manager at Excel Sports did not immediately respond to a text seeking information. This was the 3rd time that Woods has been involved in a car crash, most recently in February of 2021 when his SUV ran off a coastal road in LA at a high rate of speed, leading to multiple leg and ankle injuries. We'll have continuing coverage throughout the day on ESPN.